Joining me now, Scottie Nell Hughes, news director of the Tea Party News Network, and also joining us, Ben Wikler, progressive strategist and host of The Good Fight. We thank you both for being here. Scottie Nell, forgive me, but in this case it'll be ladies second, although I mentioned you first. Ben, I just have to go to you on this comment from the president. This notion that criticism and taking principled action is, quote, hating. Is that a successful political strategy?
Well, JD, thanks for having me, Scottie. It's great to be on with you. When life gives you haters, you have to make haterade. And there's no mystery that this is an incredibly toxic political atmosphere, and President Obama's calling for some civility. You know, there's a big business in fomenting outrage and very strong emotions against President Obama, as Scottie and you know, folks at the Tea Party News Network know well. If I had a nickel for every anti-Obama bumper sticker, hat, or T-shirt, as you do, then I would probably have enough money to fund the anti-Obama lawsuit myself. Although, in fairness, I am helping pay for it as a taxpayer.
Wow. Talk about haterade. He's just out of the gate, JD, with it. I mean, good gracious.
Have at it, Scottie Nell. Go ahead.
Well, you know, it's almost as much money as the Democrats right now are using in the false propaganda that we're calling for the impeachment. Talk about people that are out there selling a false line, which no Republican senator or House member is sitting there saying, you know, impeach the president. You know, I'm not one that is a fan right now necessarily of this House case to sit there and have to sue the president, but he has. If he would actually come off the golf course and maybe stop raising funds for his other Democrat cronies and actually start being a leader, maybe he would actually care about what the people of this United States cares about, which is closing our border and maybe the economy and getting people back to work instead of putting more money in the coffers of his cronies. That right there is more of a crime than anything of the haterade that the Tea Party might be spreading.
Well, as you mentioned, Scottie, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Ben.
So the most recent poll says that 2/3 of Tea Party supporters say the president should be impeached. A majority of Republicans say that. And they're not just coming up with that out of the ether. They're hearing that from an echo chamber that is so riled up about just about anything the president does that they're simultaneously attacking him for wildly exceeding his authority and for not doing his job enough and being on the golf course too much. You kind of have to choose one or the other. Either you're overdoing it or you're underdoing it. But I think the through line there is that if President Obama does something, it must be bad. And it's a good thing to buy a T-shirt about.
Well, you know, I'm all for clothing the people right now, but to be honest with you, the majority of people, if we're going to sit here and throw out polls, the majority of people actually regret right now. I think, what was it, 90% of people actually regret their decision in the last presidential election, because since then, all we have seen is a constant, endless number of scandals that this president has done. You know, you want to sit here and talk about House ineffectiveness. It's sad that, yes, the House has actually accomplished things. They have passed more than 255 bills that are sitting there in the Senate to do. The Senate, and actually I'm kind of glad that they're being ineffective. The less ineffective this president is, it's the less that our country is worried of being taken over from the progressives like yourself and the agenda that you're trying to do into destroying this country.
All right, now let's come back here and let's talk about an issue that got a brief mention, I believe, Scottie Nell, from you, and that is what is going on our southern border. We have a situation where there is not a unified Republican front. We understand Senator Ted Cruz went over to meet with some House conservatives, basically advocating a no vote on John Boehner's border bill, saying it will not solve the crisis. And it's a situation that, in a sense, can allow the president and the Senate to perhaps work their will for a policy that a majority of Americans don't want to see. Scottie Nell, what do you make of this rift within the Republican Party?
Well, I think this is one thing actually that it does cross both party lines, because you're seeing Republicans and Democrats very, very crossed on this, because they're saying, you know what, we do not need to be bringing in this influx. We can barely take care of our own citizens. You're seeing the Democrats, you're seeing those within the urban areas going, no, wait a minute, we need to take care of our own citizens first before we bring others. So it's not this rip just going on within the Republican Party, even though it is happening there, but you're also seeing this amongst the Democrats. The Democrats are not united, hence why you're not seeing them out there saying, push pushing for this immigration bill. You might see President Obama pushing for it. You might see some of his guys out there trying, but you're also seeing Democrat governors like Colorado and other Democrat governors saying, hey, please don't bring these guys. Or just seeing North Carolina, Kay Hagan saying, please, I'm in a re-election. Please don't bring and give these children to my state. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So, this is a rip just not within the Republicans, JD. This is a rip going on with the Democrats. They're just doing a little bit better of a job of hiding it from the public eye.
Well, Ben, let's bring on the comments of a fellow liberal, if we can. Alan Dershowitz appeared on our program earlier, talking about immigration, among other things. Let's listen to what the Harvard Law School professor had to say and get your reaction after we listen to this.
Well, I'm a strong supporter of American immigration. My family all came over. My grandfather, his proudest moment was to bring 29 people on the eve of the Holocaust from our family. I'm sure some of them came illegally. They ended up being very productive members of society. So, you don't have here a sympathetic ear to draconian restrictions on immigration.
Well, Alan Dershowitz went on to say that he wasn't advocating illegality, yet trying to make that distinction. Ben, new polls are showing a majority of the American people want to see the newest illegals, the juveniles, deported in a humane way, but deported. What's your take on what Professor Dershowitz, and what the public opinion polls are showing?
If you engage people in a conversation about what these kids are fleeing, the studies are finding that majorities of kids who are arriving in this country right now would actually qualify for legal asylum status if we actually had the resources and the systems to process them. These are kids fleeing violence, persecution, terror. And the United States' best self is the country where people can escape from that kind of thing and lead healthy and productive lives. That is the promise inscribed in the Statue of Liberty. That's how my family came here, and so many families came here. And I think that's actually something that does cut across party lines. Glenn Beck is right about this being a humanitarian crisis. And this is something that if we actually learn about the stories of what's happening, I think we can find...
We're having some trouble with Ben's Skype. Ben, hang on a second. Scottie, Nell, your take on this.
I think it's interesting that he brings up the stories, because there's stories on both sides now, because right now you're seeing stories of down in Texas where another reporter said that they have video of these guys, these smugglers on jet skis bringing over women and their babies and just dropping them off on the other side. Yes, is there problems going on in other countries? Of course. There are problems. At the same time, if we really cared about it that much, we would send our troops into those countries and take care of those gangs. And we would sit there and we would have it's sad. Last week, we saw the president of Honduras talking more to another news corporation than we saw him actually talking to the White House. We would have real leadership coming from our president in this White House talking to those diplomats saying, hey, how do we solve this on your borders within your country instead of sending them over to us? You want to talk about family stories? Let's talk about the stories right now of the gang members that are coming over. Let's talk about the families that are now having to deal with diseases and the Ebola virus that's now starting to spread and it's starting to pop up. You're right. This is a crisis starting, but it's something that we have caused amongst our own borders, and it's no thanks to the lack of leadership of this administration. He caused it when he sat there and said that he would not deport, and therefore there's a reason why the influx of these children and all of the other students, but we're not just getting children, we're getting gang members, we're getting drug cartels.
Indeed, Scottie, Nell, according to the Pew report, over 80% of the Central American illegals coming in are teenage males between the ages of 14 and 18. A quick amendment to what Scottie, Nell had to say about Ebola. It is not coming in with this group. Ebola thus far has been identified in Africa. Certainly there are other communicable diseases. Ben, I think we've reestablished contact with you last minute. In fact, less than a minute remains. Lois Lerner's emails coming out. Some rather non-family friendly terms for conservatives. Does this add fuel to the fire and add to the problems for Lois Lerner?
Look, we all know there's no love lost between the Tea Party and the IRS, but people in the IRS, regardless of their personal conversations, are civil servants trying to do their jobs and keep the lights on in the federal government, unlike the Tea Party, which seems to have delighted
We will have to leave it there. Ben, we're sorry the technical problems are bringing a hesitancy to your speech. Scottie, Nell, you never hesitate, and you're not easily duplicated, never imitated. We thank you both for being on with us, and we look forward to our next discussion. Don't go away. There's more straight ahead on this edition of America's Forum.